When students come into an online class, sometimes they'll ask right up front, am I going to have to work with other people? And oftentimes I like to reply a question with a question, and that's simply, do you think you can survive in the world without ever working with other people? So I want to jump in and I want to look at group communication. I like to call it teams, but here's the truth. I was on teams my whole life, starting almost from birth. I had 4 brothers, and so we were a team at home, and all of those skills translated to the classroom, to the ball field. I love teams. I think they really are all of these things: creative, effective, innovative, and communicative. Now, you have probably heard this saying, I'm going to get out of the way, that teamwork makes the dream work. But the truth is, sometimes that's not all of our experience. So this may look a little more familiar. This is just a meme about group work. And that is, usually we have one person, and you'll see that on the screen, who does 99% of the work. Then we have another person who just kind of comes in. They have no idea what's happening. They're like, what are we doing? And they kind of rely on people to tell them. We have really energetic people who are idea people at the beginning. They say they're going to help, but then they don't. And then we have people that kind of ghost us at the beginning, and they show up at the very end. In my face-to-face classes, I'll often ask, which one of these do you think is the worst teammate to have? And honestly, most of them will say number 3, the person that says he's going to help, but doesn't. The truth is, I think that the people who do 99% of the work are maybe the most selfish and long-term struggle to work with other people because they need control. I want to encourage you to practice the skill of connecting with other people and collaborating. In this class, I focus on process as much as product. So it isn't about what you get done, it's about how you do it in the process. So let's look very basically understanding groups, and I have really jumped in and researched these pretty extensively because I wanted to know what is the best for students. In communication research, we know, if you're taking notes, write this down, that 3 to 12 people is what we consider a small group. So you need at least 3, but no more than 12 or it gets a little bit tricky. Here's the other part, and I'm going to talk about this in a little more depth, but roles matter. Every person is a piece of the puzzle, and we want those pieces to really come together so that we see the whole picture. That matters so much. And here's the last one that's the most interesting from research, that groups are an opportunity for growth. And here's where research says you get the most growth. That is when you're with people you didn't know and are not like you. Yes, it stretches you, but maybe you've heard the proverb, iron sharpens iron. For iron to really sharpen, it has to be heated and it has to be stretched. And that's actually, research says, when we grow the most. They did a study where they asked teams who didn't know each other to talk about their project experience versus teams that did know each other. The ones who felt they learned the most were the ones that were in groups with people they didn't know. All right, so let's talk about these roles. I really want to jump in and look at 3 kinds, and the last one we're not going to elaborate on, but that is task roles, social roles, and then counterproductive roles, roles that are not helpful. And you can imagine what those are. So let's start with task roles. When you're meeting with people, face-to-face or virtually in Zoom, you want a recorder, someone that is taking notes, writing it down. Who is there? How long did you meet? Were there anything said? Did we assign tasks to anyone? That's so helpful. So you should always start by saying who's going to be the recorder. Number 2 is a facilitator. This person gets the conversation going. They'll say, what do we need to do by the end today? Are we focused in the process? They keep the conversation on track. They keep it all on the rails. And finally, sometimes I think it's helpful to have a timekeeper, and you may not have thought of this, but when I'm facilitating meetings, I will ask someone, could someone keep time? So when we do an icebreaker or when we brainstorm, I'll say, okay, everybody has 30 seconds to share, 1 minute to share, 2 minutes to think. And I'll tell you a secret. It keeps the people who talk too long from talking too long. It's actually really helpful. So those are some examples of task roles. Then we have social roles, and I think this is really important to understand. These make a team or a group feel like they're connected, and we can't overlook these. They're not formal, they're kind of informal. The harmonizer are people that kind of peacemakers. They will gel the group. They will often kind of calm people down. They will ask questions if things start to escalate. They will say, okay, let's focus here. We also have an encourager. This is a person that says, that's a great idea. Ooh, I didn't think about that. Does anyone have anything else? I'm so excited to be here. I know that this is going to be great. Their communication is so positive, and it just sort of adds fuel to your collaborative fire. And last, we have this gatekeeper. This is a person that kind of knows, make sure that we're proactively communicating. So they might send a follow-up email out or a follow-up text. They might communicate with the instructor to say, hey, I'm just going to clarify, are we on the right track? So those are groups. We're not going to talk about counterproductive, but the people that don't talk, the people that face-to-face are very distracted on their phones, those are counterproductive roles. People that disagree just to disagree, not helpful. So I want to end by just kind of going over what are some very basic tips for being successful in a group. Number one, always set a goal. Have an agenda. What do we want to get done today? Number two, be so positive in your tone, in your communication. Be encouraging, be affirming, be confirming, right? Number three, don't be afraid to be a devil's advocate. You're going to see in your textbook the term groupthink, where when a lot of people tend to agree, it's hard for someone to speak up. It's sort of this vortex of thought. Don't be afraid and dare to disagree. And finally, always, always ask for everyone's input. Be paying attention to the person that's not talking. They're usually listening, and sometimes they have the best things to say. All right. Finally, I want to end with this quote from a book called Think Again by Adam Grant. It's one of my favorite books on organizational psychology. He's so committed to helping people work together well. And here is what he says. Be a teammate who is committed to getting it right over being right. If you want to be great, show up, contribute, and say often, I don't have to be right, but together I want us to get it right.